friends, it's Rana and we are here today to find out who are my top 10 read authors, i.e. who are the authors I read the most number of books by them. There was this feature, this page on Goodreads where you can see all the authors you read, books, multiple books by them, and how many books you read and what are the books, and I quite love that feature on Goodreads, but then they deleted it like a few years back and I still hate them for that. So I just sat down on my read shelf on Goodreads, manually counting each book I read by each author to see who are my top read authors. I didn't include any mangakas or graphic novel authors because I read a lot of manga and the list will be mostly mangakas if I included them, so I didn't. When I made this list, I found out that actually not all of my most read authors are my favorite authors. I consider only 4 or 5 of these authors to be my favorite authors, but that's another video for another day. I will start from my least read authors to the most read authors, and starting with number 10 with 6 books, we have Lois Lowry. The books I read by this author are Counting Stars, On the Horizon, and the 4 books, the entire The Giver series, which consists of The Giver, Gathering Blue, Messenger, and Sun. I didn't realize how many books I read by Lois Lowry till I made this list. I thought I read only The Giver series, but it turns out I read more. I don't consider Lois Lowry to be one of my favorite authors, but she is a great one, and she is very good at what she does. And I believe I need to read more books by her because I quite enjoyed every book by her except for Counting Stars, but she is really good at what she does, and I will definitely pick up more books by her in the future. Next, at number 9 with 7 books, we have Dan Brown. The 7 books I read by him are Digital Fortress, Deception Point, the 5 books in the Robert Langdon series starting with Angels and Demons, The Da Vinci Code, The Lost Temple, Inferno, and finally Origin. Dan Brown is probably the author who has the most impact on my life because he is the reason why I read fiction. The first novel I ever read was by him, The Da Vinci Code. I read it when I was in the 8th grade. I always have been a reader, a non-fiction reader, a biography reader, but I never read a novel at that point until I picked The Da Vinci Code up. I bought it and read it because I was interested by the title and the cover. I was obsessed with Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Mona Lisa, and I really wanted to read this book that it seems like it is inspired by him without having any idea that it is a mystery thriller book, and I fell in love when I read it. I really loved that book when I first read it. It became my whole entire personality throughout middle and high school. Everyone in my class knew how much I love Dan Brown. I lent my copy of The Da Vinci Code to a few of my friends and they read it because of me. At that time, I didn't know anything about Goodreads or booktube, so I kept reading his books. Whenever I saw a book by him translated to Arabic, I bought it and read it without knowing that there is a specific order, a preferred specific order to read his books. I just bought them and read them just whenever I found a copy. You can see all of my copies of his books here, the 6 books. They are all in Arabic. I read all his books in Arabic, except the last book, Origin, because when it dropped when I was in uni, I read it online in English for the first time. I never read anything by Dan Brown in English. I hated that book, so I didn't buy the translated edition of it or read it in Arabic because I really hated that book. I think he needs to stop the Robert Langdon series because I think he did his best in the earliest books. I still feel very grateful for him and how he impacted my reading life and my reading journey, and I really want to reread all his books and review them again as an adult after all these many years and see if I'm gonna still love them as much as I did when I was younger. The next author on this list, on number 8 with 8 books, we have Shannon McGuire. All the books I read by her are the 8 currently published books in the Wayward Children, starting with Every Heart a Doorway, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, Beneath the Sugar Sky, In an Absent Dream, Come Tumbling Down, Across the Green Grass Fields, Where the Drowned Girls Go, and lastly, Lost in the Moment and Found. You might have noticed that I only read books by her in the Wayward Children series, even though she has a huge number of books, published books, and she writes a lot of books each year, but I only read her Wayward Children series. I need to try something else by her. She has wrote a lot of books by different pen names, and she is really a fast writer. I stumbled upon this series by accident. I heard someone talking about it on booktube, about Every Heart a Doorway, and I just saw that it is a short book, started reading it as an ebook, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I reread it I think 3 times by now. I really adore that book. So every time she published a new installment, and I always read them. I don't know what is in this series. I just am addicted to it. I love it. It is a simple portal fantasy series, but I really like it. You can fly through the series whenever you want. And the next installment in the series that is going to be published in next January has already a beautiful cover. It is called Mislaid in Parts Half Known. It seems like it will have dinosaurs in it. I don't know how I feel about that, but I believe in Shannon Maguire. I believe she won't disappoint. Next author we have on the 7th spot. It is actually a tie between the 7th and 8th spot. Both of them, I read 8 books by them. But on the 7th spot we have Rainbow Rowell. I know, many of you here on BookTube hate her, but I read all of these books few years back. The last book I read by her I think was 4 years ago, so she is not an author I recently read. But the books I read by her are Attachments, Eleanor and Park, Fangirl, Landline, Pumpkinheads, Carry On, Wayward Son, and Kindred Spirits. Is she one of my favorite authors? No, definitely not. But I used to read a lot of books by her because they felt like candy. It is like a guilty pleasure. I enjoyed them. They were easy to read for me as non-native English speaker, but they were enjoyable, fun reads, so I read them. I didn't quite catch on the problematic things that people accused her of recently, but I just used to read them a lot. I stopped after like The Wayward Son because that book was really bad and I didn't pick up anything after that book. Will I read anything by her in the future? I doubt it, but if she publishes anything similar to Pumpkinheads, the graphic novel, I might be interested in because I really enjoyed it. But as YA novels, I'm really not that interested in them anymore. The next author we have on this list with 9 books is Patrick Ness. I read by him the 3 books in the Kai Swoken trilogy, which are The Knife of Never Letting Go, The Ask and the Answer, Monsters of Men. In addition to 3 short stories in that trilogy, also A Monster Calls, More Than This, and The Rest of Us Just Live Here. If you are not new here, you probably know that I really like Patrick Ness. I like his writing style, his stories. I think he is a little bit underrated. I don't know why people don't really talk about him that much on BookTube, but I think he is a really good author. The only book by him that gets mentioned a lot on BookTube is A Monster Calls, and just because it is a sad book that makes everyone cry, but funny enough, it is one of my least favorite books by him. And I'll of course keep reading more books by him. There are a couple of his other books that I'm interested in. They don't have high average rating on Goodreads, but I'm still interested in some of them. Next author at number 5 with 11 books is another author that first introduced me to the sci-fi/fantasy genre, is Marissa Meyer. The 11 books I read by her are the entirety of the Lunar Chronicle series, consisting of Cinder, Scarlet, Chris, and Winter, in addition to 3 short stories in that series, and 2 companion novels, Fairest and Stars Above, in addition to a standalone novel called Heartless, and 1 graphic novel called Wires and Nerve. The Lunar Chronicles was a really good series. I enjoyed it quite a lot. It was a bit long for me because I never read anything that long before I started the series, but it was really enjoyable. I liked it. I was thinking about DNFing Cinder actually. I didn't really enjoy it, but people told me no, keep going, it gets better, and it actually did. Will I ever reread it? No, I won't, but I really love the old covers of the series, and I'm still bitter that they changed it to this ugly monstrosity. And I will actually keep reading books by Marissa. I am a little bit interested in her Renegades series. I will try the first book. If I enjoyed it, I'm gonna complete it. But let's see if gonna enjoy it as much as the Lunar Chronicles. The next author we have at number 4 with another 11 books is Brandon Sanderson. I don't have all of his books here. There are 2 books missing. My sister is reading one and I have one on my TBR pile that I need to read from last year. I have been meaning to read, but I still didn't. The 11 books I read by him are the 3 books in the Mistborn series or trilogy, The Final Empire, The Well of Ascension, The Hero of Ages, and a novella in that series called Secret History, a short story called Emperor's Soul, a standalone book called Warbreaker, and 5 books in the Stormlight Archives, The Way of Kings Part 1 and Part 2, Words of Radiance Part 1 and Part 2, Oathbringer Only Part 1. I adore Brandy Sandy. I believe he is one of my favorite fantasy authors. He is so damn good at what he does. We can't deny that. I love Mistborn. The Mistborn trilogy. I really love it. I prefer it over Stormlight Archives. Don't get me wrong, the Stormlight Archive is so damn good also, but I prefer Mistborn. The Way of Kings was a little bit slow for me. I loved Words of Radiance, but I'm really struggling with Oathbringer. I finished the first part last year in November, I believe, and I still can't get myself to pick up the second part of Oathbringer because I don't like Dalinar and his reading from his point of view is so damn boring. I can't remember feeling this way when I read Mistborn. Warbreaker was not it for me, but I still like him as an author and will definitely keep reading books by him. I still need to push myself a little bit just to finish the Stormlight Archive because I'm struggling right now. Now for my top 3 most read authors. I know some of you will have some opinions about my top 3 most read authors, but please keep them to yourself. Don't be rude about them. But at number 3 with 13 read books, we have Rick Riordan. The 13 books I read by him, we have 5 books in the Percy Jackson series. Then we have another 5 books in the Heroes of Olympus series. And we have 2 standalone books, The Demigod Files and Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, and finally The Hidden Oracle, the first book in the Trials of Apollo series. As you see, I was addicted to his books in 2016 and 2017. I read all of his books back to back and I loved them. They were my introduction to my love for Greek mythology right now. I believe I enjoyed his books so much because I was interested in the Greek mythology aspect of it, not for the story of it overall. He is a good author. I liked his book a lot, but I believe that he uses the same formula of writing his books again and again and again, where it gets boring after a while. So when I started reading The Hidden Oracle, the first book in the Trials of Apollo in 2017, I didn't feel like I'm gonna get anything new. So I stopped reading his books. I still love him and I appreciate that he introduced me to Greek mythology. I had some vague idea about some Greek myths before reading his books, but I was really fascinated by them when I read his books. So I went out of my way and started reading other Greek mythology books and watching videos about them and whatever. So I stopped enjoying his books because I started reading Greek mythology and found out that I actually am interested in Greek mythology, not in his books. Will I ever read another book by him? I don't believe so, but I won't say never. Now, the author in the second place with 16 books, we have J.K. Rowling. I read the 7 books in the Harry Potter series, in addition to the 8th book, The Cursed Child, the prequel, 2 books from the Hogwarts Library series with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them and the Tales of Beedle the Bard, the 3 short stories books from Pottermore Presents series, and the 2 screenplays for the Fantastic Beasts movies, the first and second movies. If I was worried that you have something to say about Rainbow Rowell, I'm definitely sure that you have a lot to say about J.K. Rowling, but it is a discussion for another day. I don't really want to talk about it here. It is up to you to separate the art from the artist, but We all read the Harry Potter series, don't kid yourself. I didn't read anything by her since 2020. I didn't even reread the Harry Potter series since then. I'm planning to very recently to reread the entire series, the entire Harry Potter series, to see how my opinion changed on them since I first read them. Many of you won't like that, but I don't care. I don't care about the author's political agenda. I'm just reading the book for the book. Now, for the first place, the author that I read the most books by, with 19 books, we have Stephen King. Books are The Green Mile, Pet Sematary, The Long Walk, Cycle of the Werewolf, The Shining, Riding the Bullet, Carrie, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, Salem's Lot, Misery, 11/22/63, Gwendy's Button Box, Elevation, Laurie, The Institute, Later, Billy Summers, Finn, and lastly, Thinner. I'm quite surprised that my number one most read author is Stephen King. He is definitely not my favorite author. I don't know why I keep reading his books. Most of them I don't enjoy, but a couple of them were hidden gems and I love them, especially 11/22/63, Pet Sematary. He is a very talented author, we can't deny that. He is one of the most popular authors out there, but I can't consider him one of my favorite authors because I believe he writes a lot of books but doesn't put all of his heart in his works. That's why they don't always work with me. I always feel like something is missing in his works, but he always have brilliant ideas for his books. He just don't know what to do with them most of the time. I will for sure keep reading books by Stephen King in the future. I think he will remain my top read author for a few years now, unless I find another author that has written a million bajillion book for me to read. We don't have that many authors who write so much like him for us to pick whatever we find interesting to read from. I think he has written over 60 books, I believe he has written. So I can choose whatever I want to read by him. That's why I have read so many. I think if I read all Brandy Sandy published works, he can take that spot from Stephen King and become my most read author. But for now, Stephen King seems like will be sitting at the throne for a while. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to see my future videos and I will see you next time. Bye!